Why the Pope has a net worth of only $100. He's the spiritual leader of more than 1 billion people worldwide. A global icon, revered by millions, feared by some. He shapes doctrine, headlines, and diplomacy. He has the power to speak to kings, presidents, and parliaments, and be heard. He lives inside Vatican City, one of the most mysterious and powerful institutions in human history. A place steeped in legend, layered in secrecy, and wrapped in ritual. From the outside, it looks like the very pinnacle of influence and power. Gold ceilings, ancient thrones, bulletproof Pope mobiles. He stands at the head of a global empire of churches, schools, charities, and wealth beyond measure. But according to official reports, his personal net worth? Just $100, you heard that right. The Pope, a man at the center of a multi-billion-dollar institution, technically has less in his name than the average teenager with a summer job. Wait, what? How is that even possible? Let's unpack it right now in the next few minutes. And let's break down how the Pope, the highest-ranking figure in the Catholic Church, head of state of Vatican City, and arguably one of the most influential humans alive, can wield such power, yet have less money to his name than you or me. Because behind the golden grandeur is a story you probably haven't heard, and it might just change the way you think about wealth, power, and what really matters. 1. Who owns what in the Vatican? First, let's get this straight. The Vatican is loaded, like really loaded. We're talking about one of the richest institutions on Earth. It owns priceless masterpieces by Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and Raphael. It holds centuries-old manuscripts, rare coins, relics, and enough real estate to rival entire cities. And let's not forget, there's the Vatican Bank, a financial institution with billions under management. But here's the catch. None of it belongs to the Pope personally. The Vatican isn't just a church, it's a sovereign state. Tiny in size, massive in influence. The Pope is elected as its head of state, more like a president or a CEO. He has authority over decisions, policies, and resources, but legally he owns nothing. His power is administrative, not personal. It's like saying the US president owns the Pentagon, Air Force One, and the White House. He doesn't. He uses them because of the office he holds. Once he's out, so is his access. This distinction is crucial. Unlike monarchs who inherit royal assets, or corporate moguls who amass private stock options, the Pope enters the papacy with no personal claim to its wealth. He inherits no fortune, and when he steps down or passes away, he leaves with exactly what he brought in: nothing. Everything, every chalice, every painting, every piece of gold, remains with the institution. The Vatican's wealth is collective, historical, and deeply guarded, but the man at the top, he's more caretaker than owner. 2. The vow of poverty. Here's the twist most people don't expect. As head of the Catholic Church, the Pope takes a formal vow of poverty. That means technically he owns nothing. He doesn't receive a paycheck, there's no salary, no savings account in his name, and definitely no offshore funds tucked away in the Caymans. In the eyes of the Church, he is a servant, not a shareholder. In fact, when Pope Francis was elected, he made headlines for refusing lavish perks. He declined the traditional papal palace suite and chose to live in a modest guest house inside the Vatican. He gave up his personal apartment back in Argentina, and famously rode around in a used Ford Focus instead of a bulletproof Mercedes. His wardrobe? Symbolic. His ring? Institutional. The robes, the staff, the shoes, even the Pope mobile, none of it belongs to him. Every item is technically the property of the papacy, passed from one pope to the next like tools of a sacred office. This isn't just about being frugal, it's deeply theological. For centuries, Catholic tradition has taught that material wealth can corrupt the soul and distract from a life of service. The Pope is expected to lead by example, living simply, prioritizing charity, and modeling humility. Pope Francis has even criticized excess in the Church itself, urging leaders to be shepherds who smell like their sheep, and reminding the world that the Church's mission is to serve the poor, not accumulate power. So when we say the Pope has a net worth of only $100, it's not a loophole or a technicality. It's the result of a lifestyle choice rooted in centuries of tradition and personal conviction. A vow that strips away ownership so that one man can fully embrace spiritual leadership. 3. So, where is the money? So, if the Pope doesn't personally own anything, where is all the money? The short answer? It's tied up in the Vatican itself, an institution with centuries of accumulated assets. Think museums, land, priceless art, and donations from around the world. The Vatican owns some of the most valuable cultural treasures on Earth, but it's not liquid cash, it's legacy wealth. And even the money that does exist in liquid form, like what's in the Vatican Bank, isn't the Pope's personal piggy bank. It's managed by departments, committees, and layers of oversight. Technically, he can influence how it's used, but he can't withdraw funds and walk away with them. Donations from Catholic communities worldwide fund everything from hospitals and schools to missionary work, disaster relief, and administration of the global church. Those funds are earmarked. They're not personal income. They're operational lifelines. And here's the kicker. Despite its image, the Vatican has had serious financial issues. There have been deficits, scandals, even talk of bankruptcy at certain points in its modern history. It's wealthy in terms of assets, but it isn't rolling in disposable income. Think of the Vatican as a nonprofit with billions in historical artifacts and real estate, but relatively little flexible spending power. The Pope isn't sitting on piles of gold. He's running an institution that's constantly juggling legacy, diplomacy, charity, and internal reform. Yes, there are accounts. Yes, there are investments. But they are legally tied to the institution of the Church, not the individual Pope. Everything is compartmentalized, reported, and technically under Church control, not personal ownership. And so, when it comes to actual money the Pope can use for himself, that's where the $100 figure comes from. It's symbolic. It reflects his vow, his role, and the boundaries of his office. Powerful? Absolutely. Wealthy? Institutionally, yes. And that's by design. 4. The contrast. Billionaires in robes? Here's where it gets wild. While the Pope himself lives modestly, the institution he represents is surrounded by opulence. The robes, the cathedrals, the priceless art, it all looks like wealth. And to the average observer, it feels like wealth. But it's not personal wealth, it's symbolic, it's historical, and it's institutional. Every golden chalice, every marble column, every Michelangelo ceiling isn't owned by the Pope. It's preserved by the Vatican as part of its spiritual and cultural legacy. And that creates a weird contradiction. A man who preaches humility, often photographed under gold ceilings wearing robes that sparkle. People see that and ask, wait, are we sure this guy only has $100? The contrast gets sharper when you stack him up next to modern megapastors or celebrity preachers. Some televangelists fly private, own mansions, and flaunt designer wardrobes, all funded by donations. Meanwhile, the Pope? He's taking the bus, wearing plain leather shoes and living in a dormitory. Even more ironic, he's arguably the most globally influential religious figure alive. More followers than any other spiritual leader, more diplomatic reach than many politicians. And yet, his lifestyle is built on simplicity. Of course, critics point out that the Church could sell its art, its real estate, its treasure troves, and do more direct good. But defenders argue that these items aren't just luxury, they're sacred heritage. They tell a story of faith, culture, and survival over centuries. This tension between image and reality, between opulence and poverty, is what keeps the conversation alive. And it's exactly why people are so shocked when they hear the Pope's actual net worth. In a world where religious leaders often get caught in financial scandals, the Pope's $100 net worth isn't a punchline. It's a powerful message. It's a stand, one that separates personal humility from institutional splendor. And that, right there, is one of the most misunderstood paradoxes in modern finance and faith. 5. Final thoughts. Power without possession. So, how does one of the most powerful people on the planet have a net worth of just $100? Simple. Because for the Pope, power doesn't come from ownership. It comes from influence, tradition, and spiritual authority. He doesn't need a stock portfolio or a mansion in Lake Como. His wealth is symbolic, rooted in legacy, values, and a billion people who look to him for leadership, not lavishness. In a world that constantly equates power with how much you own, the Pope is a rare reminder that influence doesn't have to come from material things. He's chosen and bound to lead without possessing. And that's not just unusual in today's economy, it's radical. The irony? By owning nothing, he controls more than most billionaires ever will. He moves markets with words. He shapes global diplomacy with a statement. He commands the attention of presidents, kings, and everyday people, armed with little more than a white robe and a wooden cross. And when his papacy ends, whether by resignation or death, he walks away with nothing. No pension, no portfolio, no golden parachute. Just his legacy. That's the job. That's the vow. Closing message. So next time you hear that the Pope is worth just $100, don't laugh. Don't even assume it's a mistake or a myth. That number is intentional. It's the product of over 2,000 years of spiritual tradition, one that values service over salary, humility over holdings, and faith over fortune. It's a number that shocks us because we've been conditioned to associate power with wealth, leadership with luxury. But in this case, that $100 is a statement, a quiet declaration that real authority doesn't always come from a bank account. If this shifted your perspective or made you rethink what wealth really means, hit that subscribe button. We drop new videos every week unpacking the stories you won't find in your finance textbook, where history, money, and power collide. Stick with us. There's more to uncover.